Welcome back to the deep dive. All right, so today we're doing something, well, a bit different maybe. We're tackling a full counterintelligence analysis, but our main source, it's actually a 1987 action comedy.
Yeah, it sounds wild, I know. But we're digging into this really fascinating paper by an investigative analyst, Justin Lake. He wrote this strategic film analysis
Right.
that basically treats Beverly Hills Cop II not just as a movie, but like a primary source document for a Cold War intelligence operation.
It's called Operation Phantasm, a Cold War intelligence reading of Beverly Hills Cop II. And honestly, it completely flips the script on the movie's villains.
Totally. Lake's big argument, the core idea, is that Maxwell, Dent, and Karla Fry, the main bad guys, they aren't just your typical greedy American criminals pulling off insurance scams.
No, he argues they're actually deep cover operatives,
Yeah.
highly trained members of the East German intelligence service, the Stasi.
Exactly. And the whole crime spree, the alphabet crimes as the movie calls them, Lake says that's actually a code-named geopolitical exit strategy. He calls it Operation Phantasm.
So, for this deep dive, our mission really is to follow Lake's analysis. We're going to look at the clues he points out in the film itself.
Yeah, the forensic stuff, like
Yeah.
the specific gun Karla Fry uses, which is really interesting, or the way Dent's finances are set up, super complex, and just their operational style.
It's not just film theory, is it? It's trying to understand how a collapsing Cold War spy agency might try to, well, basically go private, liquidate its assets, and set up shop for themselves in the late 80s.
It's fascinating stuff. We're basically giving the movie this really rigorous read, almost like we're FBI agents looking back at a case file that just happened to involve a Detroit cop on vacation accidentally stumbling into it all.
Okay, so Operation Phantasm, why that name? Lake obviously put some thought into the code name.
Oh, definitely. Phantasm like a ghost, an illusion, something that isn't really there. Lake argues the name is key because the operation wasn't about fighting harder, it was about disappearing.
Making the whole Stasi network vanish.
Precisely. Vanish without a trace, turning all that state-sponsored infrastructure, the companies, the contacts, everything, into untraceable cash and, viable private assets. It had to be a controlled demolition, basically, leaving no paper trail back to East Germany.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So to really get this, we need the context. Lake stresses this point. The timing is everything. 1987. Yeah, Lake really hammers this home. The film comes out in 1987, and he calls this the terminal phase of the Eastern Bloc. What was so critical about 87? Why was that a pressure point for an organization like the Stasi?
Well, it's right on the edge, isn't it? You've got Gorbachev, Perestroika, Glasnost in the Soviet Union. The Berlin Wall hasn't fallen yet. That's still a couple of years off, but you can feel it coming.
The foundations were crumbling.
Absolutely. The GDR, East Germany, was economically and politically shaky. And the Stasi, which was basically the state's security blanket and its weapon. They could see the writing on the wall. They knew the money, the centralized state funding was going to dry up, maybe slowly, maybe all at once. But it was ending.
And the Stasi wasn't some small-time operation. We're talking one of the most, well, effective, maybe notorious is the word, intelligence agencies ever. Huge reach.
Oh, massive. Lake points out they'd spent decades building these incredibly complex networks overseas. And these weren't just spies hiding in plain sight. They were whole economic systems.
Economic systems. How so?
Think shell corporations, front companies that look totally legit, import-export businesses, shipping companies, and, crucially for this analysis, insurance firms.
Yeah.
Like Dent Enterprises in the movie.
Okay.
These networks did everything. Sure, espionage, stealing tech secrets, but also laundering money, moving weapons to allies, and generating hard currency, real Western money, which the East German state desperately needed.
So the state starts collapsing, the funding's about to disappear. Lake's argument is that the people running these networks, the deep cover guys like Dent and Fry, they have to make a choice.
Exactly. They know where everything's hidden, the money, the compromising files. What do? Do they defect to the West? Do they wait around to get arrested when the GDR finally collapses?
Or they go into business for themselves.
That's Lake's thesis. They choose option 3, freelance, privatize the operation. They become, essentially, entrepreneurs of state collapse. Their skills, their global connections, the sheer amount of money and infrastructure they control. It just doesn't add up for your average American criminal.
It only makes sense if they're intelligence assets managing the fallout of their own government failing.
Right. It fits the whole movie. They aren't just bad guys who decide to deal arms. They're former spies using crime to cash out state assets before West Germany or the CIA can grab them.
And these aren't new players. Lake suggests they were probably embedded years ago. Long-term assets.
Yeah, entrenched. now activated by the coming storm, the systemic entropy, as Lake calls it.
Okay, let's zoom in on the guy ostensibly in charge, Maxwell Dent. Lake gives him this code name, which is kind of intense, Vermin Hound.
Yeah, Lake has a flair for that.
But on the surface, Dent looks like your classic 80s movie villain, right? Rich, arrogant CEO, Dent Enterprises, insurance, retail, logistics. Very slick, very American.
Mm-hmm. The perfect cover. But Lake argues that what's under that cover, the sheer complexity of Dent's operation, is the first big clue. He's not just a CEO. He's acting like a high-level financial manager for a foreign intelligence agency. He's the treasurer, basically.
And the timing of the alphabet crimes in the movie, that sudden, violent burst of activity, Lake connects that directly to a cut in state support from back home, or at least the fear of one. Dent's panicking, but it's a strategic panic.
Strategic panic. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A normal embezzler might just quietly skim money off the top for years. Dent, he launches this incredibly aggressive, fast-paced liquidation of the entire operation.
And the goal isn't just to get rich quick.
No, it's bigger than that. Lake argues Dent is trying to preserve the viability of the network itself. He wants to turn all those fixed, state-backed assets into cash to fund something new, an independent arms-dealing business, a pivot.
Okay, but the method seems weird. Why the elaborate insurance fraud? Targeting his own businesses for robberies and arson. Why not just, I don't know, rob a bank if you need cash?
See, that's where Lake gets really forensic. And it shows the twisted brilliance of this supposed Stasi exit plan. If you just sell an asset that was funded by foreign intelligence, like a building or a company, you leave a huge paper trail.
Right, leading back to East Germany.
Exactly. And if that asset, say a warehouse, is full of incriminating files or records, it's a massive liability you need to get rid of.
So instead of selling it, you burn it down.
Or stage robbery. You destroy the physical evidence, maybe take anything valuable like gold or untraceable cash first, and then the American insurance company has to pay out based on the policy.
Wow.
Lake calls it converting illiquid or compromising assets into clean cash. Clean, domestically sourced U.S. dollars from insurance claims. Brilliant. In a dark way.
It's like the ultimate money laundering scheme funded by the very system they were supposedly fighting. American insurance companies are unknowingly paying to dismantle a Stasi network.
That's the argument. And Lake points to other things, too. Dent's immediate need for high-level international contacts, like the arms dealer Nikos Tomopoulos. Your average insurance scammer doesn't need a global arms broker on speed dial.
No, that points to something much bigger, a logistical operation.
And the way the deals are structured, the fake shipping manifests, the layers of shell companies that have the police scratching their heads, that's not just sloppy crime. Lake argues it's designed to be complex enough to fool agencies trained to spot exactly this kind of foreign financial maneuvering.
He's performing a sundown operation, in Lake's terms, shutting down the old network carefully, keeping the useful parts, the arms dealing potential, while erasing the links back to the state.
Yeah, privatizing state flows. He's essentially the CFO managing the North American branch of the GDR's collapse.
And you just don't see that level of strategic thinking, coordinating arson, insurance fraud, money laundering, and an international arms deal simultaneously in a typical movie plot. It feels like intelligence work. Okay, so if Dent is the mastermind, the financial brain, Lake argues Karla Fry is the proof on the ground. She's the muscle, the field operator, carrying out the violent parts of Operation Phantasm.
Right. Her cover story is Dent's executive assistant, maybe his chief enforcer. But Lake looks at her actions, her skills, and says, this is textbook intelligence tradecraft.
Her shooting skills, for example, they're remarkable in the film.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And not just accurate, but cold. Think about how she executes that payroll manager. Boom. Done. No hesitation, no visible emotion. Clinical.
Yeah, that detachment is chilling. Lots of movie villains shoot guns, but Fry has this precision. And Lake notes she's multilingual, good with disguises, social engineering.
These aren't skills you typically pick up in a local crime syndicate. These are things states invest heavily in training their operatives to do.
So the hypothesis isn't just she's a tough criminal, it's she's a trained Stasi field officer.
Exactly. That level of precision, the specialized weapons access, and particularly that emotional detachment, as Lake calls it, it screams state conditioning. Years of training designed to strip away normal human reactions in high-stress, lethal situations. It suggests professionalization way beyond what a guy like Dent could provide on his own.
Okay, let's pause on the weapons, because I can see someone pushing back here. It's Hollywood, right? They pick cool-looking guns. How does Lake make the leap from cool gun to proof of Stasi connection?
That's a fair question, and Lake actually dedicates a good chunk of analysis to the weapon forensics. Fry's main sidearm is very specific. It's a Heckler & Koch P7M13, a 9mm German pistol.
Okay, German, but H&K is West German, right?
Right.
NATO territory. How does a West German gun point to the East German Stasi?
That's the subtle brilliance of the analysis.
Right.
Yes, H&K is West German. But Lake points out two crucial things. First, in the mid-'80s, the P7M13 wasn't common in the U.S. at all. It was expensive, specialized, hard to get through normal channels. Second, during the Cold War, spy agencies on both sides routinely used weapons manufactured by the other side. The Stasi absolutely acquired and used Western gear. Why? For one, plausible deniability or camouflage, but also, frankly, for quality. Sometimes Western tech was just better or more reliable for certain tasks.
So having this specific, uncommon, high-quality West German gun is actually more indicative of a sophisticated East German supply line than, say, a common American pistol.
That's Lake's argument. For a regular American criminal, finding a P7M13 back then would be tough. But for an intelligence agency with established networks for acquiring specialized foreign equipment, East or West, it's much more plausible.
So it's like a fingerprint of non-standard, possibly state-level sourcing.
Precisely. Lake argues it significantly boosts the probability that she has access to Eastern or Western intelligence supply lines. It's an artifact, a piece of operational hardware, that points away from domestic crime and towards international intelligence tradecraft. It's a key forensic cue in his reading.
Wow, okay. That does change how you see that prop gun. It's not just set dressing, it's potential evidence.
So let's connect that back to the actual crimes, the alphabet crimes.
Yeah.
The movie presents them as, a string of robberies, arson, just escalating chaos aimed at getting insurance money.
And that's exactly how the Beverly Hills cops approach it. Just a really bold, weird crime wave hitting specific businesses. But Lake says, no, look deeper. The operational read shows these aren't random acts. They're steps in a meticulous, controlled liquidation. Operation Phantasm in action.
Yeah, Lake breaks it down into three main objectives for these crimes. And none of them are simply about stealing jewels or cash, not primarily. They're all serving this state-sponsored exit strategy.
Okay, objective one. This seems crucial. Asset removal and destruction.
Right. Lake argues the fires, the thefts, they weren't just random vandalism. They were targeted. Designed specifically to destroy records, ledgers, files, anything that could link Dent, Fry, or the businesses themselves back to East Germany or the Stasi funding.
So they weren't just burning buildings for the insurance payout. They were burning the evidence trail.
That's the primary goal, according to Lake.
Yeah.
Destroying the history, incinerating the intelligence footprint under the guise of a standard crime.
Okay, that makes sense. Then objective two, insurance monetization. We touched on this.
Yeah, this is turning those problematic assets, the front companies, the warehouses full of records, into clean money. The staged losses force U.S. insurance companies to pay out in U.S. dollars. It funds the next stage of their plan, it launders the value of the asset, and it gets rid of the physical liability all at once.
It's incredibly efficient from their perspective.
Absolutely. Financial tradecraft disguised as white-collar crime. And then there's objective three, operational disruption.
Which is basically misdirection.
Exactly. By making the crimes look like a flashy, maybe slightly bizarre local robbery spree, they kept the focus on the Beverly Hills PD. They diverted attention away from the possibility of foreign involvement, which would have brought in the FBI, maybe the CIA agencies equipped to see the bigger picture.
They kept it looking like a local problem while they were actually dismantling an international network.
And the key, Lake emphasizes, is the discipline in how they carried it out.
Yeah, how so?
The timing of the crimes, the speed, the precision, the fact that they left behind just enough evidence for an insurance claim but very little else. Lake says that screams trained team, not sloppy opportunists. They're running ops, executing plans they've likely rehearsed. It points back to that state-level training again, #TAG-V, the arms vector and behavioral signature matrix.
Okay, so they're destroying evidence, generating clean cash. All for what? Lake argues it funnels directly into the arms deal. That connection between Dent and Nikos Timopoulos, the international arms broker, isn't just a plot twist. It's the entire point of Operation Phantasm.
It's the end game. Convert all those liquidated assets from the alphabet crimes into something mobile, valuable, and sellable in the black market. A huge shipment of weapons.
And Lake specifies the likely destination, Central America, which in 1987 makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. That region was a powder keg in the 80s. proxy wars fueled by both sides of the Cold War, plus private arms dealers. There was a massive, lucrative, and politically charged market for exactly the kind of military hardware Dent was looking to move.
So Dent isn't just getting out, he's pivoting. Using his old Stasi networks, the shipping connections, the fake paperwork skills, the contacts to become a private arms dealer, going freelance using state resources.
It's the ultimate shift from spying for ideology to dealing weapons for profit. He's leveraging the infrastructure the state built to set up his own private enterprise, completely off-state books, as Lake puts it.
And the way the movie shows them planning the shipment, the cargo ship, the false manifests, Lake says that matches up with how real clandestine arms deals went down back then.
Yeah, it fits the documented methods. It adds another layer of, well, disturbing realism to his reading.
Okay, this leads us to what Lake calls the behavioral signature matrix. This sounds like the core of his proof. He basically compares Dent and Fry's actions against two profiles.
Exactly. It's his way of systematically testing the hypothesis. On one side, you have the profile of a standard criminal opportunist. On the other, a deep cover asset, specifically one with Stasi-like training and objectives. He then runs their behavior through different categories, different vectors, to see which profile fits best.
Right, it's not just a gut feeling, it's structured analysis. Let's look at the key comparisons. Weapon provenance we talked about, Fry's H&K P7M13.
For your typical criminal opportunist, Lake assigns a very low probability of obtaining that specific rare weapon. For the deep cover asset with access to intelligence supply lines, high probability, that vector points strongly towards the intel profile.
Okay, then target selection. A normal crook would hit the easiest target with the most cash, right? But Dent and Fry hit their own insured businesses.
Which makes no sense for simple robbery, but makes perfect sense if your goal is asset liquidation and evidence destruction. That selective targeting, hitting subsidiaries within Dent's own empire, strongly matches the deep cover profile's need for a controlled cleanup, not random profit.
And the last big one, the international logistics and arms broker link, connecting the local crimes directly to Tomopolis and a shipment to Central America.
For a local criminal crew focus on insurance fraud, highly unlikely. Why take that massive risk and complexity? But for a former state asset, executing an exit strategy based on converting infrastructure into arms, it's not just likely, it's the necessary final step. It's probable.
So running through this matrix, Lake concludes they consistently match the deep cover profile.
Across all the independent vectors, yes. The weapons, the targets, the methods, the end game, it all points away from simple greed and towards a complex state-level operation being privatized. Their behavior just doesn't fit the mold of standard Hollywood villains when you apply this lens.
They're acting like spies trying to cash out, not just crooks trying to get rich. Hashtag Mietes Mies, legal and thematic implications.
And what really elevates Lake's analysis, I think, is that he doesn't just leave it as film interpretation. He actually applies U.S. federal law to their actions, treating it like a real counterintelligence case file.
That grounds it, doesn't it? It takes it out of pure theory and asks, okay, if this was real, what laws were broken? Beyond the obvious, like murder and arson.
Exactly. So if Axel Foley had somehow managed to present this whole picture to the FBI, Lake suggests Dent, Fry, and their associates wouldn't just be facing local charges, they'd likely be looking at federal statutes.
Like what specifically?
Well, a key one would be conspiracy to act as undisclosed foreign agents. That's 18 U.S.C. Section 951. It's designed for people using legitimate fronts like Dent Enterprises to secretly advance the interests of a foreign power, or in this case, manage the collapse and privatization of its assets without telling the U.S. government.
That completely reframes them. Not just criminals, but unregistered agents of a foreign power involved in hostile activity on U.S. soil.
It's a national security issue, not just a police matter.
Yeah.
And then, of course, is the arms deal. That would likely trigger charges under unlawful international trafficking of military-grade material, 22 U.S.C. Section 2778. Moving that kind of hardware internationally without licenses is a major federal crime.
So the legal framework underscores the seriousness and the scale of what Lake argues is happening beneath the surface of the action comedy. It would warrant FBI and maybe CIA involvement.
Which makes the contrast with the film's actual plot. Local cops, bureaucratic squabbles, Axel's wisecracks, even starker. You've got this potentially massive international incident being investigated like a series of domestic robberies.
That's the big thematic takeaway then, isn't it? Lake argues that reading the film this way, as a Cold War cultural text, changes its entire meaning. It's not just a buddy cop sequel anymore.
No, it becomes, in his view, a story about systemic entropy.
entropy, like things falling apart.
Yeah, the gradual slide into chaos. The Cold War system, the East German state, the Stasi, it's collapsing. But that collapse isn't neat or peaceful. It unleashes this wave of highly specialized, privatized violence and crime.
The privatization of state terror, as he puts it. The ideology dies, but the skills, the networks, the capacity for violence that finds a new market.
Exactly. The trained killers and skies don't just fade away. They become freelancers in the global underworld, particularly the arms trade. The infrastructure of violence outlives the state that built it.
And Axel Foley's role in all this becomes kind of beautifully ironic. He's not just solving a local crime, he's accidentally tripping up this huge geopolitical maneuver.
Completely unwittingly.
Mm.
He gets involved because they messed up the shot Captain Bogomil, violating their own operational security probably, and he just follows the trail, disrupting their careful exit plan purely out of loyalty and, well, being a good cop.
It plugs into those underlying 80s anxieties Lake talks about too, doesn't it? The fear that the enemy isn't just over there, but might be hidden over here, inside legitimate businesses, ready to emerge when the global order shifts.
Yeah, the fear of unseen foreign influence, and maybe the fear of what happens when state control dissolves and that power becomes purely mercenary. It's the transition from state conflict to something more chaotic, more privatized.
So the whole time we're watching Eddie Murphy charm his way through Beverly Hills, we might actually be witnessing the messy birth of the post-Cold War private security and arms market. That's quite a reading. Hashtag outro.
It really is. Lake's paper, Operation Phantasm, it's just a powerhouse of analysis. Applying that intelligence framework to pop culture like this, it just unlocks these hidden layers, these covert textures in the film you'd never see otherwise.
Yeah, Dent and Fry stop being just, greedy bad guys. They become these narrative artifacts, as Lake calls them, of that whole collapsing Cold War world. Their competence, their methods suddenly make perfect sense if you see them as products of that system trying to survive its own demise.
And this whole deep dive, looking at Lake's work, it really opens up possibilities, doesn't it, for how we can analyze films, how we can bridge geopolitics and popular culture in ways we might not expect.
Definitely. So maybe the final thought we can leave you with, something to chew on. When you watch an old movie or even look at current events involving, say, sophisticated criminal groups or hackers, ask yourself the question Lake implicitly asks about Dent and Fry.
Right. Is this just straightforward crime? Or could it be something else? Could you be seeing the fallout, the privatization of some collapsing state interest or intelligence apparatus?
What larger geopolitical shift might actually be funding or enabling this specific operation? Sometimes the clues aren't in the headlines, but maybe, like Lake suggests, they're hidden in the choice of weapon, the complexity of the money trail, or even the fine print of an insurance policy.
It's a fascinating lens to apply.
It really is. Thanks for diving deep with us today.